You risk sneaking a glance over your shoulder and scream, "Ah! Bloody!" Hello and welcome to my YouTube channel. I am Espoir de Vite, and today I want to play a game that's part of the NaNoReNo game jam called Vile Strangers. Bus stop, 8:45 p.m. Why am I at a bus stop at 8 o'clock at night? Ugh. The man next to you at the bus stop covers his nose and waves a hand in your general direction. Hey! Absolutely vile. Learn to take a shower and use soap for once in your life. How dare you say that to an otaku? Your eyes twitch at his condescending tone, his voice filled with judgment, which is to be expected considering it's coming from a guy in a fancy suit. Oh, how flattering. Just what I needed to hear after working 9+ hours. You think in tired annoyance before flipping him off when he turns his back towards you. He's still gagging, playing up his disgust as he creates a large amount of distance between you two, although not going too far so he can still catch the bus you're both waiting for. Yeah, fancy pants, you gotta use public transportation like the rest of us. He's probably the sort that's never changed a diaper, you're certain of it. You sigh and lean against the small bench you parked yourself into when you couldn't remain standing any longer. Lifting your arm, you sniff yourself and then wrinkle your nose. Okay, maybe that guy has a point. Okay, the jerk might have a point. You smell like a mix of blueberry slushy with hints of chocolate sundae thrown in. Not a bad combination. At least, not until you take into account that the scent mostly stems from someone vomiting all over your poor uniform. Oh. You tried to wash it off and wring your shirt out in the bathroom sink as best as you could, but yeah, this shirt's probably coming out of your paycheck. Maybe the smell didn't bother you so much since you've gotten used to it. Currently, you work at Bobby and Bibbles, a family restaurant center that offers arcade games and egregious amounts of greasy foods that make your own stomach churn since you know how it's all prepared. You're 100% certain your workplace has violated about a dozen health code protocols. Take yesterday afternoon, for instance. You had a literal staring contest with a mouse stealing cheese off an uncooked pizza before it ran off, heading for a clear-cut hole in the wall with open access to the counter. And despite telling the manager about this, the manager demanded the pizza still get served. They didn't even opt to throw it out, just argued there was no time, and then retreated back to their office. And that's not even the worst of the offenses. Most of them were far more disgusting, but you've turned a blind eye each time. Well, not that you've got much of a choice. You're steeped in student loans, and this is the only job that accepted you after months of endless searching. So in the end, you've learned to grit your teeth and bear it. You sigh again, letting your head rest against the back of the wooden bench, your head tilted upwards to the darkened sky. At least the day is almost over, you tell yourself. What more can happen? And then you wince, because as soon as anyone says or even thinks those words, crap always hits the fan. You look over at the man standing far away from you. He's actively ignoring your presence, which is fine by you since he's probably not going to be the thing that makes your night end up worse because you decided to jinx yourself. Maybe the buses could wind up running late then. You try to predict the terrible luck that'll befall you when you hear harsh and heavy steps. You glance over. Ah! And holy crap, the guy's walking towards you is huge! A massive bulk of a man. You'd need climbing gear just to see him at eye level. He's that tall. He's tall, you say? It's intimidating. When he makes a grunting noise, you crane your neck to look up at his face, but he's wearing something over it. Ah! Like a mask. Oh, please say this guy isn't the result of your self-inflicted jinx. He's just some party-goer, right? That's some party. Probably with a costume theme considering his apron that looks like there's a few red splotches right on the "you are screwed" alarms start ringing in your head, sirens going off left and right, as your brain scrambles and tries to determine whether or not those are actual blood splatters or simply dollops of ketchup made to look like blood. You try to recall if you've seen anything in the news or true crime channels about masked murderers in your area. But if you're being honest, the crime rates are astronomical in your city. Despite the fact that you're currently near the outskirts, the place is a festering cesspool of criminals, all congregating together in one area. Not even here is safe. You clench your fists on your lap. Looking away, you see that the other man waiting for the bus walked off somewhere. Dang it! I can't target that guy. Great. So now you're alone with this guy. Hey, pal. The hulking man doesn't say anything as he lowers himself onto the bench next to you. You can hear him breathing. Long, drawn-out breaths, punctuating the quiet. An involuntary shiver crawls down your spine, and you scooch towards the other end of the bench, making as much space as possible between you and the hulking man. It's then that your brain finally decides to remember the news report from this morning. The body of a 34-year-old man, identified as Raymond Maverick, was discovered strung up inside the gazebo of Winterberry Park yesterday evening by a young woman jogging in the area. Reports say that You dislodge the thought with a furious shake of your head. No, that won't happen to you. It can't, because that's... Your brief stint of denial gets cut off by the sudden movement out of the corner of your eye. The masked man cocks his head slowly, surely noticing how you stiffened, your body going rim-shot straight and locking into a tight coil of fear and discomfort. He's staring right at you. His breathing grows heavier, as though your response excites him. A loud, resonant sound inflicted into the silence of the night. You can't even hear the sounds of the city in the far-off distance from where you're positioned, like everything's frozen in time between you and this man and this moment. Out of the corner of your eye, you catch sight of his hand twitching. You finally turn your head towards him, trying to keep your trembling under wraps as you shove your quaking hands between your legs, knowing full well that if he attacks you, you're practically defenseless. Where the heck is that darn bus? Shouldn't it have shown up by now? He cocks his head to the other side as you hold his gaze. At this moment in time, you really wish you took your trusty old ballistic knife with you as an extra precaution, but your knife wasn't in any shape to offer protection right now. And besides, you didn't know you'd encounter someone like this on your way home from work. Better to have it and not need it than need it and not have it. The cherry on your poop sundae. Then again, would a knife even bring him down, or would his muscle act as a barrier? You could take on a normal-sized guy, but him? Jabbing him with something sharp might wind up feeling more like a splint or a toothpick, and you probably wouldn't even reach his vitals if you went toe-to-toe. Yeah, the best thing you can do is avoid the worst-case scenario. You turn your head away, the moment junky and awkward, the pressure of being so intensely watched making you self-conscious about everything you do. You're seriously considering leaving at this point. There's plenty of cheap hotels within the city limits willing to let you stay for a night. A reasonable option, and one you're heavily considering. At least, until you remember that you've got a list of things to do when you get home that you can't exactly hold off on. Doing so is out of the question. A second idea comes to mind as you think about just walking home, hightailing it out on the long stretches of sidewalk, your path lit only by a few flickering streetlights. No, don't do that. That's even more dangerous. You can handle walking a few miles in favor of big and scary over here. But what if he follows you? Oh, yeah, that would be terrifying. Then you're even further away from other witnesses. But at the rate things are going, you're not even sure if the bus will show up anytime soon. There's a possibility the bus broke down en route. It's a hard decision to make. Well, don't make me make it. Stay here and endure the creepy-looking man, or walk home and risk him following you. Either way, you need to make a choice. I don't wanna. Oh no. Well, knowing me and my stubbornness, I would probably stay, but at the very least, create some space between you two. You're fine waiting right here. He's creepy and unsettling, but he hasn't tried anything yet. An oddball, but there's plenty of those currently living in the city who pose no inherent harm to others. You convince yourself you're acting overdramatic. Regardless, you decide to get up off the bench in order to create some distance between you two. You busy yourself, acting like you're stepping away to sort through the inside of your bag, not searching for anything in particular, but using it as a prop to appear like you're unaffected by his presence. You keep within sight, just in case the bus comes barreling past, when there's a soft creak originating from the bench. Then you hear the crunch of gravel, the footsteps stepping onto the asphalt and nearing closer and closer still, making you break out into a cold sweat. Your hand freezes in your bag. He's headed straight towards you, the sounds of his lumbering approach drawing near. You wince at the heavy clunk of his boots, reminded of the possible force he could use against you, his entire body shaped like a weapon built to crush those smaller than him. He pauses, and you know he's right behind you. The shadow he casts underneath the yellowed glow of the streetlight consumes the entirety of yours, swallowing you whole and making you disappear completely. This feels like the beginning of a campy slasher movie, yet it's your unfortunate reality. You want to believe he's a prankster, someone who gets a kick out of messing with strangers, but there's so many terrible people that you've encountered and endured in this world that you can't convince yourself otherwise, despite managing to do so a few minutes before. Because now, he's right behind you, and you feel a hand clamp down on your shoulder. The hairs on the back of your neck stand at attention. You let out a small gasp and watch as the masked man's shadow moves, his free arm rising and lifting up while horrific theories of what he's holding cycles through your head. You don't want to stick around to find out. And finally, your brain kicks into gear. Before he can do whatever he's about to do, you dart out from underneath his hand and make a run for it. Bus be darned, you're not staying a second longer. You bolt towards the direction of the city. Your sneakers slap against the harsh pavement of the cracked sidewalk, your canvas bag banging painfully into your hip, but you ignore the pain because you can hear him. The stomp of boots. You're right to fear him, because now he's giving chase. He's eating up the distance between you two. You know he is, because of how long his legs are. One of his strides probably matches 3 of yours. You refrain from screaming. Doing so won't serve any purpose other than making you lose previous amounts of oxygen that you could use for running away from the masked man. Not to mention, you doubt there's anyone around to hear you. Not unless that man who gagged at you earlier is still hanging around somewhere, but there's no sign of him. And even then, he'd probably turn tail at the sight of you screaming and the figure chasing after you, because you know guys like him, and they're not in the habit of helping others, especially when their lives are on the line. You're alone in this. The masked man breathes. You grit your teeth as you pump your arms and legs faster. The cold bite of air whips, rushes past you, and stings your face and cheeks. A splash of something wet splashes against the back of your hand as you propel your body forward with each step, the weight of your body getting heavier the longer you run. Overhead, darkened clouds descend, covering the entirety of the night sky. There's a rumble, and then a streak of lightning illuminating the world as rain begins to pour down in heavy sheets. The change is sudden. You find it almost laughable. It's like you're filling out a slasher movie bingo card. What a joke. But you refuse to let the weather keep you from escaping the deranged man who's become even more frantic. He's so much closer now, isn't he? You risk sneaking a glance over your shoulder and scream. Bloody! He's an arm's length away. Your body's almost within grabbing distance, and there's something in his hand that you can't quite make out within the darkness. The only thing you can see is that the item glints when another violent lightning strike tears across the sky. A weapon. He's got a weapon. You're certain of it now. Turning your head back in the direction of where you're going, you ignore the sharp, burning pain in your side from running so long and hard, trying to at least reach the park to see if you can lose him. Any other path will lead you to a dead end, and your body will end up mangled in a ditch somewhere if you give this masked man an opportunity to corner you. Besides, you are the closest to that area now. The body of a 34-year-old man, identified as Raymond Maverick, was discovered strung up inside the gazebo of Winterberry Park yesterday. No, stop thinking about that. There's no way the same thing will happen to you. Not unless... Get back here! No! Hands grasp at the back of your shirt right as you catch sight of the park's entrance, and you make a sudden sharp turn to dislodge the man's grasp and send him stumbling forward and past you as you make a break for the open gap in the rusted iron fencing. Someone cut a small human-shaped hole into the wires to let people pass through when the gates are locked. You thank those little property-damaging kids, since it's a small enough size for you, but not the bulk of a 6'8" man that's currently trying to catch up with you. You manage to watch as the man hurtles towards you like a linebacker on a football field, and your heart seizes in your chest. You probably went through it. Turning your body, you frantically squeeze through the gap. The cut wire of the fence tears into the front of your stomach, and you let out a yelp, the rusted wire tearing through the fabric of your uniform. You manage to pull out onto the other side, just in time to watch as the man runs into the fence. You stare at him for a moment, heavy breathing on one side, and him on the other, with one of his hands curled around the wire and the other in his pocket. It feels like an eternity. And then you turn tail and flee, sprinting through the weeds choking the landscape of the abandoned park. The broken swing set to your left shrieks in complaint as the wind tugs and pulls, almost sending the metallic chain lashing at your face as you dart past. You hear the clang of a fence somewhere, and you just know he's climbing over the fence, but you can't see him through the curtain of rain, despite trying to use your hand as a shield in order to keep the water out of your eyes. Dude, okay, you really got something to tell me. At this point, I'm curious. Then you spot the gazebo, the one where they found the man. You don't hear the newscaster in your head this time, but rather one of your co-workers gossiping to another in the break room while you were scrolling through social media. My sister was on the scene. She said they cut off his limbs and almost made them look like wind chimes with how they organized his arms and legs. His torso was in the center of it all. They completely disemboweled him. Well, golly. You remember hearing the girl say, right as your foot reaches the bottom step of the gazebo. But what about his head, and his hands and feet? Usually they identify bodies by dental records and fingerprints and stuff, right? The other coworker asked around a bite of his sandwich, the memory of his comment asked in sync with you reaching the top step and plunging yourself inside the gazebo. The girl telling the story shook her head. They couldn't find them anywhere, although his DNA identified him because of his past criminal history. Beep! My dude! Her words intermingle with the present as something catches your wrist, your scream piercing the air with violence and terror as your body gets forcibly yanked backwards, sending you tumbling towards the ground. Yeah, I know about his record. Talk about a scumbag. Your elbow bangs painfully against the rotting floor of the gazebo. He went to jail for abusing his wife and kids, or something along those lines, didn't he? You stare up at the masked man with wide, horrified eyes. He's breathing hard, his fists clenched at his sides, the veins in his arms throbbing as if in anger. He did. And you know what I say to that? Ask the memory of your female coworker, right as the masked man slowly reaches behind him, the thing glinting in your peripheral as he draws it out once more. Good. You screw your eyes shut and brace your arms above your head. Riddance. Am I dead? Is this heaven? You crack open one eye and see a palm extended to you, a small little bunny-shaped keychain resting in that same hand. You dropped this. The masked man says, a bit breathlessly. Your gaze goes from the man to his hand, and then back again as something seems to click in his head. Sorry. When I reached for you, I almost tripped and grabbed onto the railing for support, but I accidentally dragged you back in the process. Here, let me help you up. Officially stun-locked, you let the masked stranger help you to your feet. He then observes the scrape on your elbow. I'm so sorry. He starts patting his pockets before drawing out a bright pastel pink band-aid and helping you put it on the scrape. Aww. Should do for now. He's catching his breath and beginning to form fuller sentences. What just happened? You stare at the masked man with your jaw slightly unhinged before you shake your head and point an accusing finger at him. Wait, so you're telling me that you chased me down like a madman because you wanted to return something? Why didn't you say anything? You scared the living heck out of me. I thought you were trying to kill me, dude. Oh. The masked man sounds almost sheepish as he touches the tips of his pointer fingers together as he looks away. Don't you be all cute. I was terrified, my dude. I tried to say something, but you suddenly ran away. I didn't realize you were running because of me. Why did you think I was running then? You fold your arms over your chest. I thought you were looking for something in your bag and couldn't find it. So I figured we're racing to get it before the bus showed up. I thought it was the keychain you dropped. It's limited edition, right? He's right. The keychain in question belongs to a show called Little Lucy Lamb's Herd. Aww. that aired in the early 80s, displaying a cute and colorful cast of, what else, lambs, who often talk about themes of friendship and doing the right thing. Penny, a pink and purple lamb, wound up becoming your favorite despite acting as more of a secondary character. She taught you to always do what you could to help others without expectation of a reward, causing you to look up to her example, even now as an adult, the keychain a reminder of that exact lesson. You wonder if that's what the masked man was thinking too, as he chased after you. Finally, you nod to his question, and clench the keychain in your fists before putting it in your canvas bag for safekeeping. Oh, stealing glances at the masked man as you do so. Despite the mask, you can tell his body language that he appears anxious, if not a little shy. Can I ask you one last question? You say at last, and he jumps a bit, as if surprised you addressed him, and then he nods, the movements quick and eager. Before, on the bench, why were you staring at me? He fidgets. He touches his mask, playing with the zipper for a moment before dropping his hand. I was staring? He asks, having fully regained his voice. No more long drawn-out breaths. You just stare at him, your expression patient but tired. You did go into a full-on sprint on the way here, after all. Not to mention you had a long day at work. You hear him swallow, the sound reverberating inside his mask. Oh, I'm sorry. I just thought you were pretty, and it made me want to sketch out the design for a new mask. He mumbles a little under his breath, voice soft and sheepish, and filled with embarrassment as he gives the rotting floors a slight kick. Aw. Looking at you kind of inspired me. I haven't felt that spark in a really long time. A mask? Wait, is that why? You meet his veiled gaze and point to his own mask. Yeah, I made this one. They make me feel more comfortable when I wear them because when I usually have my mask off, I can't really... Never mind. He toys with his apron, and you realize the splotches of red are likely from some sort of dye he used when creating his masks, or possibly even when sketching. The masked man wrings the fabric around his fingers. Now that your heart's finally settled and things have calmed down, it hits you that, while socially awkward and somewhat misguided, you see he's not really a bad guy. It's actually kind of sweet how above and beyond he went to try and return your keychain, which is valuable and hard to replace. Aww. Considering you recognized my keychain, I'm taking it you're a fan of the show? The masked man perks up. He's doing subtle hops on his feet, now vibrating with energy. I have all 10 seasons on VHS. I sometimes rewind the segments with Darla, since she got really creative with crafts and making elaborate costumes. I always wanted to become a costume designer when I was a kid. Did you know Darla was actually never supposed to make an appearance, and, He cuts himself off mid-sentence. He looks away and rubs the back of his neck. Sorry, I tend to prattle on. You blink at him, and then your gaze softens. I don't mind. I actually like learning more about the show. He's practically brimming with joy, and you can feel it pouring out even with the mask on. Oh. You know what it's like, having to silence the things you like simply because someone said something negative about it or looked at you weird. Really? Are you sure? I wouldn't say it if I didn't really mean it. You say. We can talk about it on the way back to the bus stop. Hopefully we can still catch it. By the way, you say as you make your way out of the gazebo, I never did catch your name. The masked man hesitates a moment, all bashful as if he's considering something, as you watch as he brings his hand to the zipper, drawing it up a little to reveal his mouth. It's Theodore. There's a shy smile playing at his lips, and then he quickly zips the mask back down all the way again. It feels significant. And you think back to what he said a few moments earlier in regards to the mask he wears. They make me feel more comfortable when I wear them, because when I usually have my mask off, I can't really... Never mind. Yet, despite whatever reservations he seems to hold about taking off his mask, he unzipped it. Just a little. You don't know why, but a quiet smile finds its way to your lips. As you and Theodore make your way back, he takes his apron off and uses it as a makeshift cover for the both of you to huddle under in order to avoid the onslaught, holding the fabric above his head. He shares factoids about little Lucy Lamb's herd that even you didn't know about. Theodore looks animated as he talks, his hand expressive as he gestures around, like it's the first time anyone's ever given him permission to just be himself. It's kind of adorable. It's very adorable. And when you reach the bus stop, you arrive at the perfect time, the bus pulling up right beside you two. Well, geez, was the bus that late? On the way home, you and Theodore exchange numbers. And when you get off the bus, he waves at you through his spot next to the window. He set himself as Teddy in your phone, and there's a smile playing at your lips as you stare down at the name, already seeing a text from him with a few bear emojis. But then you catch the whiff of a coppery scent, the trail leading straight to the bathroom at the end of the hall, causing you to stiffen. What? You place your phone into your back pocket and drop your bag. It lands with a heavy thud in the quiet of the house. The silence, despite the ongoing storm, feels unnatural. No sounds coming in or out. You finally make your way towards the bathroom. The hallway feels so long and tedious to walk down as your heart hammers against your chest, violent and all-consuming. Your hand reaches for the doorknob and pauses. You give yourself 1 second, then 2, before you open the door. And are greeted by a mass of blood and gore, some of the blood dried along the lip of the tub, and other pieces too thick and congealed. What? The stench is overwhelming, and you slap a hand over your nose. This is much worse than the vomit. Your eyes dart towards the small square sink where a name tag rests, and you force yourself to breathe through your mouth as you step inside, picking up the small square tag. Raymond Maverick. What? Manager. The cute blue bunny that doubles as your job's mascot holds balloons in the corner, crusted blood arched along his pink nose and rosy cheeks. This is the entire reason you needed to get back home. You couldn't put off getting rid of the rest of the evidence, since you're sure law enforcement will start digging into your manager's death, and if they find any trace of him or suspect you of killing him, you're done for. Oh! You always hate cleaning up after your messes. You don't exactly enjoy killing people. You don't do it for the power or the high, or because you saw it as some sort of sick fantasy. You do this because putting an end to people like Raymond always proves necessary for the pain they cause to those around them, putting an end to their cruelty when the law refused to. Oh, it did say after the whole mouse on the pizza thing that he did much worse. Oh. You loathe people like Maverick. They bring out the worst in you, and you wield that burning hatred towards them like a weapon. It wasn't even the rumors at your job that alerted you to his abusive behavior, but something you witnessed in the parking lot after you'd just gotten off of your evening shift, watching as a small SUV careened past you. You grind your teeth as you remember what he did to his wife in the front seat, watching as mascara ran down her face, one of his hands tangled in her hair, while the other gripped the steering wheel of the car. Jeez! The veins in his neck pulsed and throbbed, his face entirely red with rage. and their child was in the back to witness it all. You knew right then and there that you didn't even need to research this man's background. You were going to fluffing kill him. And so you did, doing what you had to by flirting with him just enough that he didn't even hesitate when you secretly asked him over to your house. The act disgusted you, but you reminded yourself that you'd soon bear fruit. And you did. It was all too easy. Better yet, he feared getting caught, since sleeping with an employee could get him fired, so he laid low on the way over. At first, he tried getting handsy as soon as you opened the door, but you managed to shove a beer into his hands before he could pry your shirt off, and then lead him inside, waiting for the opportune time to strike. He downed a good portion of his beer in a matter of minutes, not even processing the odd taste, as you tried to wait out the effects of the drug in the bathroom to avoid him touching you again. When you came back, you could see him trying to get up and off the couch, but stumbling. In that moment, as his back remained facing you, you went haywire. 30 years of pent-up rage unleashed on you, sir. Your bodies tumbled to the floor as you charged at him, burying the blade deep into his back, relishing in the bastard's screams and his feeble attempts to crawl away. His wails of pain and anguish were slurred, and he asked you over and over again why you were doing this, unable to comprehend why anyone would bring him harm, and desperately pleading for help and someone to come and save him. But no one could hear his cries, because your entire house is soundproof. Not to mention you live far out of the city for this entire reason, using the complete solitude in order to avoid any potential witnesses. You felt his body grow weaker and weaker as you plunged the blade into him over and over and over again. You were lost in a fervor, a crescendo of your emotions at an all-time high as tears streaked down your cheeks in empathy for his wife and child. Die, 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 die! The word repeated itself in a vicious cycle through your head as you tore steel through flesh. You didn't stop until you realized his body had gone cold and he lay limp beneath you. You were breathing hard as you pulled back, letting your head tip back as you soaked in the moment of relief after doing what you set out to do yet again. People like him always asked why. Why are you hurting me? What did I ever do to deserve this? None of them self-reflected or repented or begged for forgiveness for their previous actions. You aren't a senseless killer. You have your reasons. The people who would wind up in the receiving end of your knife are terrible people. Simple as that. From domestic abusers to sex traffickers to those who torture animals. They end up on the receiving end of your ballistic knife. Of course, it's the same one you couldn't bring with you today, since it's still covered in DNA evidence from yesterday. Not to mention the authorities are no doubt looking for this thing, so it's within your best interest to keep this thing squared away for safekeeping, in order to avoid any suspicion from coming your way. Usually you try not to have any connection with your victims, but after seeing what you did, you couldn't help but want to take down your bastard of a manager. And now he's 6 feet under. Because of that, his wife and kids are free from his constant abuse. The downside, he's your problem now. You sigh as you turn towards the tub. Yeah, no. That's a problem for later, you, because no matter how many times you've done this, which is well into the double digits, you always get queasy at the sight of so much gore. The only reason you can handle it during a kill is because of the adrenaline coursing through your body. Otherwise, you want to hurl just like the customer who ruined your uniform did. You go with knife cleaning first, and let the water run over the steel of the blade, imagining a hopeful future for your manager's kids and wife, where they don't live in fear of constantly making the wrong move. Innocent people deserved protection from the monsters around them. Innocent people like Raymond's wife and kids and... Theodore flashes through your mind. Yes. You're certain he's gone through pain because of someone who took advantage of that innocence, and there's no doubt people like that in his life who continue to do so. You want to protect people exactly like Theodore. Those scars, the ones underneath his mask that he revealed to you in that vulnerable moment, weren't scars left behind by any accident or birth. They were intentional. You glare down at your now clean knife. You're determined to find out who made them, and end their existence. Because keeping people like him safe is the good you choose to do for the world. It's unconventional, frowned upon, disturbing, but you're determined regardless to find and eliminate every vile stranger you can find. Cool! It was me! I was the crazy person. I was the righteous crazy person. Now that we know all this, would anything different happen if I just tried to walk home? You opt to travel home by foot rather than staying next to this freaky stranger any longer. Pulling yourself up from the bench, you avoid eye contact with the masked man, choosing to keep your eyes focused on the road ahead of you. You listen out for footsteps as you move away from the bus stop. But after a few minutes of walking, there's no sign of the odd man pursuing you, the echo of footsteps only coming from your own worn-out sneakers. You sigh with relief. The night air is brisk, a cold chill on your skin. Above, storm clouds gather and merge, sure to bring in an ominous storm. Thunder claps overhead, and you frown as water begins to pour from the sky, adding yet another obstacle to your trek home. Then, a twig snaps, and you freeze. Did the man follow you after all? You hesitate a moment before turning around, searching through the darkness for any sort of masked figure. You find no trace of him or anyone else. Swallowing hard, you force yourself to try and get rid of the paranoia as you continue your way down the empty streets. But for some reason, every little sound sets you on edge. Well, maybe because you have a dead body in your tub at home. A deep-rooted fear of something lurking in the darkness, ready to spring at you when the moment presents itself. You imagine those strung-up body parts belonging to Raymond replaced with your own, your body hollowed out like the guts scraped out of a pumpkin. A shudder runs through you. So was I the one who made that little artwork in there? You don't consider yourself to be a terrible person. In fact, you even try to return some good to the world. In your own way. But others would argue against the good you do. Maybe they'd even go as far as... Your thoughts are interrupted as you hear a slight dragging sound. You peer behind you, but no one's standing there. Did you hear wrong? Frowning, you glance back to the road ahead before your gaze lands on something standing off in the distance. Oh! A vague, human shape. You recognize the businessman from earlier. But what's he doing here? As you begin approaching him, you feel as though something is not quite right, an uneasy feeling spreading throughout your gut. For some reason, he's staring in the direction of your house, which you can see off in the distance. Hey now, buddy, you don't want to go over there. He remains immobile, despite the ongoing storm. You can't even see his chest rise and fall as he breathes. It's creepy and unsettling, and you're starting to regret your decision to walk home. But you're almost there, so you might as well just shuffle past him and try not to make eye contact or encourage any sort of attention. You're relieved when the businessman doesn't react as you walk by. But then you realize something odd. In his breast pocket, a wilted red rose peeks out, and you frown at the sight. Why would a businessman have a red rose sitting there? Then again, maybe there's some plausible explanation, and you're just looking too deeply into things. But right as you pass him, You feel something clamp around your wrist, and as you look over your shoulder, you see the man staring at you with a hardening expression. There's something familiar about his face that you can't quite place, like you've seen him somewhere before. But before you can react, something sinks deep into your gut. You gasp, "What?" "It burns." "What?" The man then shoves you back, and you stumble off of the sidewalk and into the middle of the street, holding onto your stomach as you try to process what's happening. When you drop your hand and see it stained with blood. As your gaze meets the man's again, he takes out the wilted rose and tosses it towards the front of your feet. You look down at it with confusion. Right before you hear the blaring horn of a bus. "What?" And your body is pulled under and crushed beneath the bus's wheels, your entire body pinned beneath the hulking steel. And as your world turns dark, all you can ask is, why? Was that my comeuppance? Bad end. How dare you, dude? How dare you? Did you know that I was a crazy cute murderer? I'm only trying to do what's righteous. That just goes to show you that the monsters are usually the ones in the suits, not the ones in the masks. Actually, that was a joke, but that's pretty good. That's pretty good metaphor. And this game was developed by the same developer as you and him, so be sure to check out that game too. I know this was for a NaNoReNo jam, but I wonder if we're gonna see more of Theodore. I would love to know more about this sweet baby, and how we can protect him. Theodore's smile must be protected! And if you enjoyed this video, be sure to give it a like, as it will help my channel grow big and strong. But anyway, thank you so much for hanging out with me. Take care of yourself, have a great night, and remember, there is always hope.